These regulations specify the responsibility of food donor and surplus food distribution organizations, those who are engaged in distribution of surplus food to any person free of cost. Before moving ahead, let's understand what is surplus food. Surplus food means any leftover or unused portion of safe food that have not been served to the customer. These regulations describe roles and responsibilities for various stakeholders involved and key requirements for ensuring safe and hygienic donation of surplus food. Responsibilities of food business owners or food donors. Responsibilities of surplus food distribution organizations. Labeling requirements of donated foods. Maintenance of records of surplus food. Monitoring committee and its functions. Guidance and support of food authority. A food donor is any person or food business operator who donates surplus food. Food business operator donating food should ensure that all food products being donated are safe for consumption, segregated into perishable and non-perishable, segregated food is packed safely, kept away from waste materials or products. Food donors should remember that it is important to hand over surplus food to surplus food distribution organization at a reasonable time before it gets spoiled or its expiry, so that the food is made available to needy persons for consumption within the shelf life of the food. Food donors should ensure that an advance notice is given to surplus food distribution organization so as to ensure a timely distribution and consumption of the food within its shelf life. These regulations define surplus food distribution organization as any person or any organization that collects surplus food from food donor and distributes directly to any person free of cost without any profit. Surplus food distribution organization which is serving food to needy shall be regulated in accordance with the provisions of the Food Safety and Standards Licensing and Registration of Food Business Regulations 2011, and such foods shall be obtained from reliable sources having valid registration or license in accordance with the provisions of the Act. The Surplus Food Distribution Organization shall have proper facilities for transport, storage and reheating, and shall comply with following food hygiene and safety requirements. Surplus food shall be picked up from FBO's facility and packed in clean and covered containers. Such food containers shall have the required date marking, such as pickup date and the use by date of food. This food should be transported in clean and sanitized containers at an optimum temperature in insulated containers or using ice packs if necessary. The containers coming in contact with food should be non-toxic and made of food-grade material. Food should be stored off the floor and away from walls and non-food items. Storage area, including the floor, pallets, and shelves, shall be cleaned regularly. Doors, windows, and roof of storage area shall be well sealed to prevent pest entry, and a pest control program shall be in place for such areas. Ensure that surplus food is distributed and consumed within the period of shelf life and should be fit for human consumption. No surplus food distribution organization shall distribute surplus food after expiry of its shelf life. Refrigerator being used for storage of surplus food should be cleaned weekly and suitable temperature should be maintained. Food that is not fit for human consumption shall be put in a container clearly marked as food for disposal. Employees or volunteers that work with distribution organizations and come in direct contact with food shall keep their fingernails trimmed and wear clean outer garments, wash their hands before starting work and as often as necessary, especially after eating, handling, or using the washroom, etc. Avoid eating food, drinking beverages, or using tobacco in any form in areas where food is exposed or in areas used for washing equipment or utensils. Ensure that no person shall come in contact with food during any illness that is communicable through food. Cuts, boils, and wounds shall be covered. All employees or volunteers that work with distribution organizations and come in direct contact with food shall undergo training in health and personal hygiene. The requirements for labeling of donated food depends on whether the food is in its original package or has been prepared as a meal. Donated pre-packed food shall bear its complete original label, including name of the item or food, manufacturer information, list of ingredients, and date of expiry. Donated prepared food shall be labeled with the name of the food, the source of the food, the date of preparation, and last date of consumption, and also specify whether the food is vegetarian or non-vegetarian. The information on the label shall not be masked in any manner. Food donor and surplus food distribution organization shall maintain records of surplus food. The records shall include name and address of the food donor organization, name and address of surplus food distribution organization, donation date, name of the food product or item, batch number of the food product or item, date of manufacturing, best before date or expiry date, quantity donated by food donor, temperature of food, quantity distributed by surplus food distribution organization, area where food is distributed, date of distribution. Commissioner of Food Safety of the state or union territory shall constitute a monitoring committee for surplus food at state level consisting of 2 members from State Enforcement Agency, 1 representative from Department of Consumer Affairs of respective state, 1 representative from Surplus Food Distribution Organization, and 1 representative from Industry Association and other relevant stakeholders. Monitoring Committee shall monitor and make recommendations on the improvement of the operations by the surplus food distribution organizations and food donors. Monitoring Committee may also conduct training programs in health and hygiene for food handlers of food distribution organizations and also make recommendations on issues arising from implementation of the provisions of these regulations. Food Authority may issue guidelines on collection and retrieval if food which is near expiry for donation and provide guidance to support the operations of food business operators covered under these regulations. The Food Authority may also specify the time before the expiry at which food shall be segregated.